Well, welcome back to the dinner table, friends. I am so glad you are all here, and I am so glad to welcome my friend Angela Schwengler. How are
Yay, you
you?
got it right. I'm
I don't
good.
I don't know why I feel like I have to be like Schwengler. Like I can't just
I
like,
feel so fancy.
like swing like
That's what it is.
yes. Every time. And I think it's also because I am one of those people that likes to try to pronounce, like really be very good at pronouncing people's names.
Mhm.
So it's like, how did I learn to pronounce that person's name? Schwingler. Schwing. Okay, I got
You gotta
it.
have a little fun with it first.
Well, welcome to the dinner table. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you for having me.
so
I'm
glad
excited.
you came and had dinner with me. And I've been looking
So
forward to
good.
sitting down with you for a while now.
Me
So
too. Thank
thanks
you.
for being here. It rained this morning.
It did.
It was so nice. I, I truly believe that me and God and nature and Mother Nature and everything, we stay pretty well connected to each other. Like we talk about things and we have like um, feelings. Like I have feelings, and
Yeah.
I go through a period of time every summer or anytime we're in a long period of drought where I start going, it's time. I can feel it. I can feel it. I need it. I need it. I need to feel it. And so then I start like actually imagining feeling a summer rainstorm, What does it
Yeah.
feel like to like hear the sound of the thunder in the summertime, and the lightning and that smell and that relief, and just the how the rain and a lot of times I've been known to dance outside naked. I have been known to do, I'm not even kidding. It was kind of a
I think
joke for
that's
a while,
important and
but
it's like a primal thing. I think that,
yeah.
we all used to do.
I didn't do that this morning, but it's not unheard of that Aislynn would get out half nude and dance in the rain. And actually now I actually probably should be doing it more because I'm single. so, so yeah, but no, I do a rain dance. I call it in. And this morning when I got up, I was doing my meditation and things, kind of trying to get my day in an order. And I've actually been a little bit slacked. I would say that I probably had a little bit of a depression over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, me too.
I just kind of dropped off. And so
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of like changes in like, I haven't been to yoga in a few weeks and I haven't been
Yeah.
to the recovery group at the chapel. Your mom is the reverend at the chapel.
Yeah. I've been intermittent too with that. So.
Yeah. And, and even my like morning meditations and Qigong, I've had like, I've been trying to like, but I still have very like connected moments. Like
Mhm.
I never, there's no point in my life do I ever not in constant conversation with God. Let's put it that way. Like, or
Yeah.
in constant conversation with like the universe and all the
Yeah.
things that are going on and welcoming in whatever you have for me to learn from this.
Right.
And so I get up, I'm doing that. And then I go to get my coffee and I open the Facebook shit, the thing I'm most addicted to in all the world.
Aren't most of us.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And I open it up and the very first thing I see is, and I don't even know exactly where this person lives, but she said, "Isn't the smell of rain nice?" And I was like, I flipped to the Weather Channel. The Weather Channel says there's a chance of rain. I'm like, oh God, it's raining. I can feel it. I'm not kidding. I'm not
That's
even making
good.
this up.
Yeah.
I'm literally that kind of like weirdo. And I've done it. I mean, this has been a thing with me and weather. Like I get
Mhm.
into it. I'm like, I'm gonna be here and we're gonna get the rain and I can feel
Yeah.
it. And then all of a sudden we start hearing a little shower and mom goes, "Is that rain?" And I was like, "Oh, it's raining. God told me. We already made a decision. It's coming down right here on Taft." And I'm one of those people that all I need, truly, even in some like massive collective consciousness where the collective consciousness has fully decided that this is the truth and no one can argue it. I'm one of those people that all I need is for one person to give me a hint that we can change that collective consciousness, like that I can heal my own body.
Mhm.
One person telling me they saw a miracle. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm good. I got this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like whatever. And so that was my thought. I looked at the Weather Channel. I saw we're going to get the one cloud right over the top of us. And it rained a half an inch this
That's
morning.
awesome.
And you should have seen everything on the farm. The trees,
Everything was dancing, right? It was all
every
half nude dancing.
Seriously. I mean, the pigs were like, la, 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 like rolling over and showing their titties to the world. Like,
Yes.
Now all I want to do, Angela, is just crack you up the entire time. This is fun.
I'll probably end up snorting like the pigs. So
the ducks were like all quacking and doing their thing, wanting to come inside. But the trees, like even the trees, I imagine like the tree is like a woman shaking her hair out in the rain. The dogs are going out in the rain, then coming back in and shaking the rain off all inside.
Right.
You know, I mean, everything on the farm was doing a dance and enjoying it. And it was such a gift. And it's like one of those that, you know, it cools off the morning and then the whole day was a cooler day.
Yeah.
You know,
I
and
loved that.
I'm so grateful for that, you
Me
know,
too.
kind of stuff. I'm really one of those people that hardly complains about the weather because it's just so, all these different elements of weather are so important.
Mhm.
And what are you going to do about it anyways? Like,
Right.
oh,
You have to relinquish your control.
it's windy in Corpus. And I'm like, yeah, thank God we get some breeze, man. You know, if you're in Dallas right now, you'd be like sweltering.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, so I'm always very grateful for all of the pleasant weather events that we have.
Well, and I particularly love the rain, especially for what you said, because it drops the temperature for a little bit.
Yep.
And it's been so freaking hot here.
Yep.
I mean, in the hundreds.
Like baking hot.
Yeah.
Like we were
it'll be 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. It'll be close to 90 degrees. Sometimes, I mean, the other day it was probably around 95 already.
Wow. Yeah.
That early. And I'm like, oh my God, this usually doesn't hit till midday.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the reason why it's not completely it's not completely woo woo.
Right.
We're going to use that freaking word. It's not completely woo woo to say Taft, the space that we're in actually gets more rain because of the climate, what's happening on the microclimate on the ground here compared to other places around us.
Yeah.
So when someone says it never rains over my house, you know, it just, I mean, like everybody around me gets rain. I'm like, that's because there's something going on in the temperature around where you live. It's like a
microclimate or something.
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. And that I'm a weather watcher. And I mean, part of it is because of the agriculture and the work that I do, but it's like being an event planner where I'm always like gauging my life based on, you know, whether the weather's going to be helpful for the event or not.
Right.
You know, being somebody that lives on the coast, that we actually have pretty big weather events down here. We have like traumatic weather events even.
I
can call the weather.
Because you're in tune with the weather.
Yeah. I'm paying attention
to it. You really do pay attention to it. And you can probably feel it on some sort of deeper level than a lot of people are in touch with it, especially probably because you're in it. You're in nature all the time.
Yep.
And not everybody is in it. You know, not a lot of people are grounded.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, and I think that that's part of the reason why, like, I don't complain about the weather a whole lot. I don't, you know, other people will say, God, it's so hot outside. And I'm like, actually, it's not really that hot. It's just that you sit inside a 72 degrees temperature all day long.
Yeah.
You said you work outside, right?
I do.
Like, so you're out in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so hot.
But then you also you do art too. You're an artist.
I do. I'm a painter and I'm a photographer too. So,
but your business, I mean, the work, okay. So you have a art business that you focus on your own art, creative art, right?
Yes.
But you are a photographer as your profession too, though, right? You actually,
you photograph cars for a living.
That's really cool. That's an interesting.
Yeah. I never thought I would do it ever in my life.
Well,
but
it's
cool.
I'm always impressed when somebody takes a skill like that and finds a way to get the corporate paycheck, because that's the biggest challenge for most creatives.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I don't know if it's luck, but I feel like I've gotten lucky with that kind of thing. Cause my mom always says, you've always had this knack for creating your job.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that I actually create it, you know, like I don't create it out of thin air. I mean, sometimes I guess I have, but there have been times where I'm just like, this is what I want to do. I just need to figure out who can get me there.
Yeah.
And then it all just lines up, you know, like maybe if I'm applying for a job in the past or whatever, I apply for the one job and then I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's almost part of manifestation too, you know?
Yep. I have been one of those people that created my own job. Like, I created my own path through college. I created my own career, you know, all of that. I wouldn't say it's the way you described it. I don't find that spot but like I said, I appreciate it. People that can take, because it really is, that's to take a creative job and make it fit into, my thing is that I can never seem to be able to make it fit into the 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 stream of inside. I'm an outside, like but I also hear you saying, I really wish I could get on the outside. Like I really wish, and sometimes we get really comfortable when, especially when you've managed to take your creative skill and fit in, like be able to plug yourself in. Then we get really comfortable in that, and we're like, I'm good at it and I do a good job and I make good money.
Yeah.
Even though I really would rather go just spend all of my time doing the creative thing.
Yeah.
Well, you've got someone like me where I've like created my jobs literally out of thin air. Like, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit and then I'm going to build it and then I'm going to pay people and then I'm going to and I literally
that's so admirable. Like even though
I make no money though. That's my point about all this.
I think even though it's such hard work, I think it's probably so fulfilling. I mean, to have seen the impact that you've made, I think it makes it worth it in the end, to go through all of that.
It's helpful to be reminded. And that's not from a point of arrogance, or it's from a point of, I get so down on myself sometimes that I forget that I'm not just the troublemaker Aislynn out there stirring up the pot again. And then coming to failure or feeling like I have to give up because it's, it's just like, I have a lot of,
but I relate to trauma you a lot related with that kind of stuff. I mean, when I first went to therapy, my therapist was telling me, man, you're really hard on yourself. And I never thought that I was. I'm like, everybody's not like this. So then, finding somebody like you who says these things out loud, because not everybody does. A lot of people just struggle internally, And I'm not saying that you are struggling or that you were, but I have before. And I hear it in what you're saying. Like, I feel like it's a reflection, so you saying you need somebody to say it back to you. I also need to hear that validation sometimes too, because I will get lost in that spiral of thought of like, oh, I'm not doing enough or whatever,
Giving myself a break.
Done so much though.
Well, okay. And so that's the thing where it's like my own personal worth, my own insecurity. Like I feel like I'm an extremely secure person. We talked about that. But my insecurity is this, she's a troublemaker, no worth, like having issues with worth, right? So that means that you're constantly begging to be validated. Like, please validate me and tell me that I'm valuable and that this society actually wants me. We have to find a way to bring it
from within, though. That's like where the most powerful part of it is.
Yeah. We just celebrated 4th of July and I went to a pool party, and one of the guys there is a chef, and he had made fish tacos. And then he had made this like slaw on top of the tacos. It had like pineapples and jalapenos, and
that sounds good.
It was really, really, really good, by the way. And I was so grateful because I showed up and I'm braving the new world, like me and you going out to dance that night. It's like, I'm braving this world. I'm single. I'm so grateful these people were like, hey, gal, get your ass up and come over here and swim in the pool with us and hang out with us. And we're going to have this great time together. And then all these great people showed up, and then, fish tacos. I wasn't and my diet's like weird and I'm all like picky, but fish tacos, but he made this beautiful slaw with these, and he brought around this melon, and he said, it's a lime melon and everybody needs to taste it. It's so good. And tasted it. It was really, really good. And of course I would say this is similar to like the cotton candy grapes and the pluots and all of it. Basically, it's the hybridization of fruits or whatever. But when I went to the store today, I got a lemon drop melon, and I had you cut it up for us to go alongside that with the figs. We went and picked figs off of the fig tree, and you had mentioned that you really liked figs earlier in the evening. So I was like, well, I'm going to take her over and pick off the fig tree. There's not very many figs left. I've been
still look like a lot to me.
That's good. That's interesting. But I have brought so many figs off that tree. Plus, we just harvested on Monday last week 500 pounds of the Spanish Lenoir grape from the wine that we drank tonight.
I can't even imagine how much that is.
It was so fun.
Much. It was it's a lot.
It was like, those big like black protein tub things that they use for cows, like huge black tubs you can plant in them or whatever. I think we had 5 of those full all the way to the top.
Wow.
And we had a nice crowd out here. It was essentially, that was what I have the farm is open on Mondays for what I call garden healing. This time of year, it's like 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. because by then it's like super hot and, whatever. And people come out, and usually I have like moms and kids and then maybe some other groups that are wanting to learn more about homesteading or whatever. But this week we plan to do the grape harvest on the Monday garden healing time, because that's a project that my dad and I do together.
Yeah.
And I let a few people know, and there's a group of moms that always comes out almost every Monday or every, certain months of the Mondays of the month. And so I had a nice crowd of like, I don't know, there might've been 10 people here,
That's
kids,
great.
adults, whatever, all harvesting that together. And he has this fancy crusher machine that he uses, my dad. And so he put those to crush and whatever. So what you and I were drinking was the 2020. So that was the 2020 harvest. And then the 2021 harvest became a red wine vinegar because we had to harvest those, and the timing didn't work out for when my dad could actually do the crushing and everything. And so they over fermented a little bit. And so he had to have it in jugs fermenting for 2 years.
Wow.
And it turned out to be an excellent salad vinegar that we've been, trying out. You and I didn't have like a normal salad tonight because our dinner was a little bit different, but I've been putting that on top of all the salads. And so that was a huge, great harvest this year. So that will be the 2023 wine is what that. So next year at this time, we'll start probably tasting the wine as we're harvesting, the next season's wine. So yeah, it's really good. It's fun to have that. And then in addition to having the figs and this lemon drop melon, what did you think of the lemon drop melon, by the way?
It was very tasty. It was different than what I was expecting, because I was expecting it to be really sweet. And it was sweet, but in a different way than I was expecting.
Like sour and tart sweet.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And it was good,
the lemon.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I grow all different varieties, which you got to see 3 different varieties of the cucumbers that I grow. And when I pulled those out and put them out to you, did they look like any cucumber you'd ever seen before?
They look like squash almost.
Exactly. Yeah. So I grow one that's called the Puna Kira, which is actually an heirloom from India. And it grows, and it actually will put on a really hard brown like shell on the outside in the summertime. So it's one that you can grow in the summertime. And one of the big problems that we have with cucumbers is that they get really bitter when the heat goes up. And it can be like anything above 85 degrees. And, we hit 85 degrees in like May. Like, yeah, exactly. February, it could be 85 degrees.
Yeah.
But it has a great flavor. There's also the Armenian cucumber, which was that big, fat, like pale colored one that looked like kind of like a squash or a melon. It actually looks like a cantaloupe kind of, or like a melon. So it has the part of the reason why it's so successful is because it is more of a melon than it is a cucumber.
That makes sense, because the seeds, the way that they were, because that was the one I had to de-seed, right?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And it grows fat. Like it'll grow like that was a small one, the one that you saw there. It'll grow like a huge, massive. And it's a perfect one for making the cold cucumber soup, which is what we made. So then I had the other version was a salt and pepper, and it's a yellow cucumber. But then I also grow one called a Suyo Long. And so I'm still harvesting a lot of cucumbers, even though the temperatures are as high as they are this time of year, just from using different varieties. Well, that makes me think about the lemon drop melon, because there was this particular melon that I grew, like a winter squash melon, like some other. And so that's all they're doing when they're taking the hybridization, really. I mean, they're just taking this flavored melon and this flavored melon and making it look like something that you would be not afraid to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then it comes out with this other really sweet, interesting flavor. And that's what we found today. Like basically that's what it is. I think it's fun. I'm always impressed. And this time of year, all the melons are good. And I'm a melon eater.
Yeah.
Like I probably would eat a personal watermelon a day. Yeah. Really.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah. You were saying that you ate a lot of watermelon, or you ate a lot of fruit, tons of fruit.
I love fruit.
That's my highest calorie right now. I know that it is. And part of that is because it's summertime too, but also it's because of the clean eating diets that I've been doing over the time.
When I was going mostly raw vegan a few years ago, I mean, that was my summer thing. I mean, in the evenings I would have maybe eggs or something, but during the day, I would only basically have fruit and nuts, and that's really all I would eat. And
Nice.
so like breakfast would be like a blended watermelon with mint in it or something.
Yeah,
And I'd
that
drink a
sounds
whole
great.
one. I'd have several different glass containers filled with it, and I would just drink it before noon.
That sounds delicious. Maybe I'll make that tomorrow.
It is good.
Like
it is so good. I
a little
miss
bit
it.
of ice or just straight
I
watermelon,
would
just
just
a
do the
cold
I
straight
would just do it
watermelon.
straight because it was so much,
Uh-huh.
when you blend all of that together.
Yeah.
And since I was just mostly doing the raw vegan thing, it didn't really matter how much of it I ate.
So we took all of those cucumbers plus some avocados and made the cold cucumber soup tonight,
That was
which
really good.
the regular listeners, the listeners that have been listening to the podcast since the very beginning, they know that I'm in love with cold cucumber soup because every season when cucumber season's here, that's going to be made at some point.
Yeah. I had never had it. It was really good.
It made me happy tonight.
I could tell. Yeah.
Every bite of it, I was just like, I wanted to slurp it. It was
You look like you were about to start singing.
It's one of my favorite foods, and tonight's was just so tasty. It was so tasty. And then to add to that, in addition to the cucumber soup, we had pork ribs, which also my favorite. I had to share the rack with you this time because just a few weeks ago I had these same similar, and I ate the whole thing by myself. This was a little different because when I made it before, I made it like more of like a roasted where it just kind of like fell off the bone, although it was pretty fell off the bone today.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And I had never had ribs before that I can remember. So it was pretty good.
I was going to say, what do you think?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a kind of meat that like, I know you said you haven't eaten that before and you don't have a ton of experience with that, but like eating meat like off the bone like that, is that something that you're much into? Like,
not really.
Yeah.
But it wasn't much of an aversion either because it did fall right off the bone. I didn't really have to do a whole lot of digging or chewing or anything like that. I mean, it was a pleasant experience.
Well, I did just a simple dry rub on that, and I salt, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, cinnamon, and then it said to put a cup of apple cider vinegar in the Instant Pot because I cooked it in an Instant Pot. And so then it was like 20.
I forgot it had cinnamon in it.
Yeah, right? A little bit of sweetness to it. Well, I mean, a little bit of that, like, what's that flavor? Sweet. I guess it is sweet.
Yeah, because I tend to kind of put it in that category when I have like a cinnamon tea or something like that. It tastes sweet even though there's no sugar. Yeah.
Agreed. Warm and sweet.
Yes.
Yeah. So I put it in the Instant Pot for 22 minutes on high and then let it sit for 25 more minutes. Actually, it ended up sitting for like 35 more minutes and then popped it in the oven on broil for like 5 to 7 minutes. And it was super easy to make. That was a little rack of pork ribs that I had actually gotten from Natural Grocers because I've been using the stuff that they have there which I was telling you about this, the idea that 15 years ago when I stopped eating meat that I would ever be able to go to the grocery store and buy any meat that I was willing to eat actually blows my mind.
Yeah.
And
it's a big change.
And speaking of you saying like, think about the things you've done in this community. I'm like, I helped to create the strength and strengthen and put a flag in the sand for a community that would actually say, this is what we want. And these are the foods we want. And these are things we need.
I've definitely seen the demand increase and I can see your immediate impact on that. I mean, even though it took time to grow that, because I know that long ago, I mean,
there was nothing.
No.
I mean, you couldn't even get a good vegetarian meal. No, exactly. And part of it is because the world is changing and we're talking more and we had a pandemic and there's more people that are from out of town that live down here now and people from California that are coming here that had access to this stuff where they lived in California. So there definitely is that. Yeah. But we had to have like a movement that kind of took its claim before it actually needed to be here.
Yeah. It's actually a part of the community, even people that were born and raised here now. Whereas, before, because I was telling you this earlier, I was vegetarian for about 14 years. And so you talking about 15 years ago, I remember what that was like having, making that decision. It was cold turkey overnight. I stopped eating meat, know, and just deciding to eat better in general because the way I was cooking and stuff. And so to see that I don't know if it's really a juxtaposition, but to see that change is drastic. Think about today versus back then. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember whenever I'd get into conversations about like the best vegetarian restaurants in town or, vegetarian menus or anything like that. It was one of the kind of ongoing conversations that I would have with people. they're just, I mean, you could get a crappy salad that was
Yep.
mostly brown.
Yep.
You could get chalupas that probably had lard in the beans.
Yep. Yeah.
Nachos, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, like you couldn't usually find cheese enchiladas that didn't have meat gravy on top of them.
Yeah. I remember anytime I would go to a restaurant, I would ask for something and I would say, can you just not put this or like substitute it with something else? Everybody looked at me like I was crazy.
Yes.
Or like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, can you just not just put something different or just take it out?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're still going to charge you the same, even though there's only lettuce.
And now it's even that is so different. When I go to a place, they're so accommodating.
Yeah.
You know, I went out to eat at Nico's the other night with a friend, and
I love it there.
They were so accommodating. The waitress was so polite, and every question I asked, and you think, okay, well, Nico's is not a corporate restaurant. It's not a chain. It's a local, you know, it's a local steakhouse that acts like a chain restaurant, but isn't a chain restaurant. But even if you go to like, one of my friends have the new restaurant in town, the USS Chefs. It's called the Galley. They actually spoke on the podcast a few weeks ago. And same thing. I went in there and I told them what I could eat, what I couldn't eat. And they, you know, the chefs literally came out, asked me questions, and then went back inside. So I'm kind of spoiled like that. Like, I want that everywhere I go.
I think there's also maybe more of an awareness too. That a lot of people have sensibilities now that maybe either they had them before or they didn't have them before, or maybe they weren't aware of them. And now everybody's talking about them, you know, and they're making it more important, you know.
It's funny because if we go back to what was happening before the pandemic, what happened during the pandemic, and what happened after pandemic, what I can totally see now is that an actual wellness conversation started. Now, during the pandemic, you weren't allowed to talk about that. I was in trouble for even speaking the things I'd been speaking for the 20 years before the pandemic happened.
I think everybody just freaked out about anything related to wellness. Got their own opinions.
But then because that happened, and because we were so many people were forcing to be able to talk about certain things, and other people were, you know, you better do research or don't do research, or are you doing your own research, or, you know, all of that conversation. Now we are actually having conversations where it's like, this affects my health.
Right.
Do you remember when you wore a mask to keep from affecting everyone's health? Okay, well, how about you pay attention to the fact that my diet, and if I eat that food, is actually going to make me sick?
Yeah.
I think that maybe some of that
I think so, 100%. Because I used to know somebody who was really allergic to onions. And so whenever she would go to a restaurant, she'd have to ask, like, are you cooking on a grill that you grill onions on? Because I cannot have any food that's touched it.
Right.
Because I will get seriously sick.
Right.
And she would sometimes get answers saying, oh, no, we'll clean it. And she would get so sick because they didn't actually clean it. They would say they would. And maybe somebody thought that they would, but then they actually didn't. And then she'd get really sick. And I think there's more people actually now paying attention and doing that now.
Because there's more paying attention. The people are asking for it. The people are paying attention to it. The idea that you'll get in trouble if you make somebody sick now. I mean, like, there's a different level of that.
That's true.
You know, like that's the thing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, still to this day, that so often when I go out to eat at a restaurant, I get sick. Even if I eat the things that I know, like just a salad, just, you know, maybe fish, you know, any. And I actually often wonder if it's about cleanliness. Like they're literally like giving us E. coli and shit like that. I don't know. Like, because it's the kind of weird like stomach thing that happens with it, and I'm like, it happens way too often.
Yeah.
So I find myself yet again never wanting to go out to eat.
Yeah, I don't tend to do that a whole lot either. I usually just treat myself every now and then, and even then I am wondering about that. Like, how clean was it there?
Yeah,
because you can't see it behind the scenes.
Well, speaking of treating myself and doing something completely outside of what I just said, I had a poke bowl from H-E-B today. And I know, first of all, I actually have a higher level of trust for H-E-B than I would any just average grocery store.
Me too.
I have a higher level of trust for their seafood. And so I was like, you know what? Poke bowl. Okay, you've got the fish here. What else is in this bowl? it had a lot of rice in it,
Mhm.
and I couldn't. They're pre-made, so it's not like I can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, will you make me like some spinach,
Right.
whatever, whatever." So I brought it home and I ate it, and it
Mhm.
had edamame in it, which I hadn't
That's
been
good.
eating edamame. I'm just now getting back into legumes and
Mhm.
anything with soy in it,
Yeah.
But it had that. I poured on top of it tamari sauce because I can use tamari instead
Mhm.
of soy sauce because soy sauce has wheat
Mm.
oftentimes in it. So,
Mhm.
some gluten in it. So I had the tamari sauce on it, and it was just it. I devoured it. Like I was like starving. Like I
Yeah.
needed, whatever
Mhm.
it was, and it was really good. And it was $11. So I'm like, okay, that seems like a treat. If I'm
Yeah.
going to be going by the grocery store in the
Yeah.
lunchtime, that would be a good time to every once in a while when I'm there. That's something I can grab.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we spoke about this last week, but you and I were talking about it too, like eating single.
Oh
like,
yeah,
like,
that's definitely a weird
like,
one.
because I love to eat, I love to cook,
Yeah,
but
me too.
like you said, I made like enough food for 4 people,
I did.
like
Yeah. I
so,
was laughing while I was cutting it up. Wow, it was fajita meat. And I was
yeah,
just like, this is definitely not for one person.
right,
And I was like, man, who can I give all this food to?
yeah,
Because it's so much. I didn't even tell you this. I bought enough food for a family of 4 the last time I got groceries.
uh-huh.
I kid you not. I bought sausage. I bought 2 things of bacon. I
You were
bought that
hungry.
fajita. Oh my gosh. I don't know what happened. But then it was getting to the point, it was like midweek. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to eat all this food by myself. I just
Uh-huh,
am not. And I
uh-huh.
don't want it to go to waste. And I don't want to go to HEB to return it.
Right, right.
So I literally asked people, like, who wants this that just needs it or
Uh-huh,
wants it?
uh-huh.
Because I just don't want it to go bad. And I gave it to a friend of mine, a family of 4.
That's perfect. That's exactly,
Mm.
I freeze a lot of stuff, so I have stuff in my freezer, but,
I just know I won't eat it if I freeze it.
well, and I was thinking about so one of the things I bought today when I was at the store was I went ahead and bought some shrimp because I've been
Mhm.
talking to somebody about coming over to do the podcast, and
Mhm.
I wanna do, I I'm testing rice clearly,
Mhm.
but using to make the spring rolls with the rice paper, you can make, and then
I
I've
love
I've
those.
got a noodle I
Mhm.
can use that's like a glass noodle made out of sweet potatoes.
Oh, nice.
So I was thinking I'd make like a shrimp spring roll
Mhm.
type of thing. I ordered a pound of shrimp, just not even thinking,
Uh-huh.
and I could have told him stop. A half pound's
Yeah.
enough, but I was like, I guess I'll just split it up and freeze it into 2 sections, But
Yeah.
like, I'm ordering a pound of shrimp. That's how you
Yeah.
order shrimp. And then I'm like, what the frick am I going to do with a pound of
Yeah.
shrimp? Like, I'm going to be eating shrimp by myself, or like for
So
the.
I can't do that. Oh my gosh. I want to. I'm in the mindset if I have enough of it,
Uh-huh.
like not necessarily shrimp, but other things. And then if I freeze it and I have every intention of eating it, I just eat it so much because I have so much of it in the fridge that
Uh-huh.
later on I just don't want it
You're like, I
anymore.
don't
And
want it
then it gets
anymore.
freezer burn and I got to throw it away anyway.
Yeah, that happens a
Like,
lot
dang
to
it.
me. So really quickly, I wanted to just tell everybody we used 5 to 6 cups of the cucumbers, 2 avocados, lemon juice, bone broth, dill, but I make sure I don't leave any of the stems on the dill because that gets a little bit of a spicy, kind of like an onion makes that spicy. I don't want that in it. I didn't notice that in it. So I was
I
really
didn't
happy.
either.
And I've
Mhm.
had cold cucumber soup before that we made here over time that had a little bit of spiciness to it. So I got all of that off, put a little bit of mint. I probably could have put a little bit more mint in it, although I thought it was delicious.
It was
So
very tasty.
it had a
Mhm.
tablespoon of the honey from our beehive in the
Mm.
back. So I had a little bit of honey in there. And then I blended it up in my Vitamix, and it actually didn't even have to sit overnight. I was expecting it to have to sit overnight. I looked at the recipe. It never even said for letting it sit. It's probably going to be even better tomorrow when I do
Yeah,
let it sit overnight.
probably.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to be all like singing. I'm literally going to sing when I eat it. I'm going to be like,
Be swinging your legs like
la,
me.
la, la. Yeah, exactly.
But I think it helped too that you already had refrigerated your cucumbers. So they were
Yes.
already kind of cold.
Yeah, that was cold,
Yeah.
and then I threw it in the fridge afterwards for a little while, and then we went on our little fig harvesting feed the You
Little
know what I
adventure.
loved was before I even told you that old man was old man, you were like, he looks like an old man, and I'm like, that's old
Yes.
man, by the
He
way.
does look like an old man though. He looked like he's balding.
He is. Okay, do you know the Dark Crystal? Because you're the kind of
Oh,
person that would
yeah.
like be into that
My
TV
mom
show.
said when I was a kid, I watched it all the
Uh-huh.
time. Weirdly,
Uh-huh.
I love that stuff. I cannot remember watching it like as much as my mom said I did when I was a kid.
So you need to go back and watch it now. And when you go back and watch it, you're going to look at those creatures and you're going to be like, oh my God, it's the same.
Chicken.
It's the chicken. It looks just like that. Skeksis or something like that is what they were called. I was really excited to have you at the dinner table because I know that you and I can get into a really interesting conversation that I often can't have with a lot of people. Partially that's because I met you through your mom, who I can talk about things that I could not talk with anybody about.
Yeah.
And I had met your mom a long time before, but I met her, like I basically started going to the chapel almost exactly a year ago. And that was like clearly a turning point for me where it was like, I need people that I can talk to. And it's that thing that I said earlier, like this woo woo, like this idea that like I have these feelings, and Juan and I talked about it last week, and I don't think the right word was used, but just this like intuition.
Yeah.
And like, what is my intuition saying to me? But it often gets like denigrated by the community because like, well, you don't have any facts to prove that. And, and I find that kind of fascinating sometimes because I'm like, well, where did you come up with the facts that you have to prove it?
Right.
And I'm like, what gave you facts? Oh, well, you saw evidence of something. Okay. Well, I see evidence of things whenever these things actually occur to me. And just because, just because you don't see evidence from that, ultimately, as I understand it, it's because you don't believe in that evidence. You believe in this other evidence. Right?
Or they're not paying attention to what maybe you're feeling or seeing.
Something
else they're paying attention to.
In that, like you said, the perspective, the perception, like what is it that you're seeing, which I think also is a very interesting thing to talk about because you and I were talking about a little bit ago about this concept of truth and of the time that you and I met at chapel. And we've had a lot of interesting conversations. And I think one of the things that we talked about was when I was going through a period where I was learning about the word truth and what does truth mean to me. And I probably kept bringing it up in the conversations, but you and I would interact about it.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, this is my truth. And I think I even said it this way one time. If I don't say my truth out loud, then someone else might not know, like, oh, there's other people that see that same truth. There's other people that see that same evidence. And the more we began to talk about that kind of stuff out loud, the more other people were like, oh, I see that evidence too.
Yeah.
So now we can begin to form a consciousness that has the same evidence, right? And what collective truth is that it's lifetime, centuries, threads, eternity. We actually have no idea what actually created that consciousness. But it's evidence after evidence after evidence after evidence.
Yeah. Well, it's like what you were saying earlier, that you need somebody to point something out to you one time for you to know that something else is possible.
Yes.
And it's like, it reminds me of being in school, nobody wants to raise their hand because they don't want to make a fuss, and they're afraid maybe that they're ignorant or something. But then one person's got the confidence to raise their hand, go, I don't understand. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, oh, I didn't either.
Yeah.
So it like opens up everybody's mind, and I think possibilities for
how do you think we created airplanes?
Right.
Like, how do you think we created so many of the things?
So many people thought it was impossible.
It
obviously is not.
Yeah. It was a collective consciousness at some point, though. Like at some point, there was enough people that were like, you know what? We're going to figure this flying thing out.
Yep.
We're going to keep at it until we figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think to me, that's that kind of like, okay, you don't have to understand my magic.
Right.
I'm the one that has to understand my magic. And what I get, I think it's similar to me of what we were talking about food, and where people were asking questions about food and how you were feeling like people were like, why would that even matter? Kind of denigrating you asking questions about something that you needed to see shift. And then the more people that were willing to, start asking those questions, the more we could see that shift start to occur.
Yeah.
And more people were willing. And then we start to see more shift. And I think that there's so much conversation out there that is, you don't have to have the same evidence or understand what it is that's working for me. And it's fascinating to be in a place where you recognize that you aren't understood, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter.
It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's okay for everybody to have their own version of reality.
There you go.
Because it's hard, because we want to fit in so badly, so many of us, that we hide from ourselves because we're afraid, what if somebody sees that and it's not part of their reality?
Yeah.
But then we can lean into that part of ourselves so that our world opens up, and then maybe the right people see that, who need it to open up for them.
Yeah.
And then they can explore the truest versions of themselves. So
my big thing is, and I'm sure this probably is for a lot of people that are probably have really been tapped into their intuition from a very young age, is what if I'm wrong? What if I fail? What if my premonition isn't true? What if I, and if you think about someone saying like, ultimately, I've basically created my own like job. I just I did this thing, and then I did this thing, and then this what came next. And it's really easy to go backwards on that stuff and go, well, this happened because this happened, and this happened because no, at the end of the day, it happened because I believed that I could make it happen, and wasn't willing to give in to the shame, guilt, fear that just kept
the internal judgment,
the ego
before everybody else judges you.
Yes. Which takes me into an interesting thing we were talking about, where we were like, you've got one side of your brain that's telling you something, like you have to make a decision, right? And you've got one side of your brain that's telling you one thing, and you've got another side of your brain that's telling you another thing, and you're arguing. Now that's unusual. I think that most people can say that they see that, right? What's the interesting part about it now is the ability to actually recognize that you're stepping outside of these two things arguing with each other inside your own mind. And you can go, who's arguing with who and who's right, right?
It becomes very meta.
Yeah. And then when you start going, who's right, you realize nobody's right. It's the recognition that neither one of that's a conflict. And if you're conflicting, then you're not in truth. Right. And so I think that that's what happens to me a lot of times, is that I get into like a shame, fear, and guilt space where it's like one side of my ego is taking on this as being righteous, and one side of my ego is taking on this as being righteous. And then I'm playing this like ping pong match
instead of just letting it be what it is.
Yeah.
Because it just is.
Because
there is no judgment of what it is.
Yeah. But then I attach to it all of the rules that we've made up in society, or over existence, or over time, or, whatever. The thing that I brought up the other day that I kind of pushed out, which I think that got some mixed reviews from people, was that I think a great way to test understanding that your mind is in control, your body is not in control. So this is going to go into the healthcare part of things. This is going to go into like our physical, like things that happen to us. That our eyes, our glasses that we wear, whatever, that is a collective consciousness belief that at, a certain age, or if you lean into that weakness, that it just progressively, it gets worse, or at a certain age, you're going to have to wear glasses. And that is a collective belief.
Exactly.
A full-fledged collective belief. That is actually one that's easier to shift than some of the other things that, like, if you're got cancer in your stomach and your stomach is in ridiculous amounts of pain, the idea that you're going to be able to collectively change that inside your mind is it's hard. It's very hard. You have to have like, you might actually have to have like a magician come that you believe in to like, like a healer come along that you believe in to like fix that for you, or whatever. Or you have to take medicine, which is the traditional collective path. But when it comes to eyes, it's like, well, we know that the eyes weaken the more you use the glasses. Think about somebody that uses a cane, right? And the more they use a cane, the more they lean into the cane. And then after a while, they literally can't, like, their muscle changes. I'm a great example of that, because I know, even though I can't see myself walk, I know I have a very different gait than other people do, because I had a bad accident on my leg. So I walk different than other people do. And I don't even know that it exists, but I do, because that's muscle memory that, whatever. Okay. Well, Aislynn, didn't you just say that your body did the thing and you can't control it with your mind? You can't just decide, And it's funny because every time anyone wants to argue with me about that, I'm like, there's not an argument here, because that you are willing to argue means that you already believe, you already don't believe. Like you can't, and that's how it works, right?
And it's so hard to break those patterns of thought. I mean, when it's so ingrained in you from when you're so young. I mean, there's even things I'm learning now that are very much in line with what you're talking about, that it blows my mind. And I'm hearing scientists talk about these things too. And I'm just like, well, if they're saying it's true, it must be true on some level.
Well, we're finally being able to see some shift, because there are things that you are willing to believe that are starting to see the shift, and more people are telling their truth, which sounds, and the thing that I always
more physical evidence too.
Exactly. The thing that I would also often get tripped up in, or like get accused of like making my own rules, was that, well, you can basically say that anything you can change anything. And I'm like, yeah, that is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, then why can't you change that? And I'm like, because I am locked into the collective coding and consciousness just like you are. Like I'm literally wearing glasses. Like I'm sitting here telling you I don't have to wear glasses, but I'm wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And even to be willing to like argue with this is no different than the ego arguing, where I'm sitting out there watching the ego argue.
Well, and it's like there's different levels of understanding of something too. So once you are aware of something, there's the awareness, but then how long does it take, and what steps do you need to take to get to a point where you actually, in your core, in your cellular level, believe it, and not just know it in your head.
Right.
That's like the superficial aspect of it. It's like, okay, yeah, we can know it, but do we really know it?
You get the concept.
Put it into practice. I mean, it's like if somebody's going into recovery or something and they're aware that they're an addict, they know they're an addict.
Right.
But are they at a place where they can stop?
No.
Not yet.
Well, and the thing
everybody's at different levels.
Yes. And the thing that I love about that, the track that you went down with that, is that when somebody is in that position, I'm like, you've done enough for recovery currently. You've done enough for your healing. The fact that you're just even willing to admit, I guess that's old school. The first step is admitting you're an alcoholic. The first step is admitting that you have some things you need to deal with. Because when you're ready, your ego won't argue with you about it anymore inside your head. And that's a good example of like, I'm going to eat that cookie. No, you're not, because I'm going to do the and I'm literally watching the argument happen inside of my head. And I'm justifying this way. I'm justifying that way. I'm guilting myself. I'm shaming myself. I'm doing all of this stuff. But when it's not an argument anymore, you're ready.
Yeah.
You've leveled up. You are ready to recover. You are ready to heal from that thing.
Exactly.
You are ready to.
Because then it doesn't matter. The good versus the bad. It just is.
Yeah. I think it's the constant argument inside my head to recognize you're still arguing. You're still having the battle that's already over with.
Yeah.
That was like, I keep hearing a lot of times people using the term, we're having an ancient battle, where the enemy, and like there's a heavenly battle going on, or there's an esoteric or an energetic battle, an ancient battle going on. And we as humans like to make everything like how a human would handle it, right? So humans do battle. That's we play sport at this age of life. We play sports. So we have red versus blue, Democrat versus Republican, whatever. The battle is already over with, but we're such doers. Like, I got to be in the battle. But then I've also begun thinking like, well, sometimes part of the ego battle that's occurring in your mind, that the fact that you can watch it, the fact that I can say, yeah, there is an ancient battle. There is an ancient battle. And there is dark versus light. There is enemy versus whatever we think the opposite of the enemy might be, all of that. But at the end of the day, whatever that means, it's all done.
Yeah.
It's all like the battle's over, and you can go down that path. This is God. You can go down that path as long as you want to, but know that it was already done before it even started.
Right. It's like, how attached are you to that process of being, that process of thinking, once you can kind of detach from it, it starts to become easier to not have that battle, or just to be able to sit back and watch it and like put it on the shelf even, instead of being like, I have to be in this because you're so used to the drama of it. Maybe addicted to those.
I'm addicted to the
patterns.
drama.
Yeah. And it's hard, man, because I've been there. It's a dark place you can go down when you're in that, you know?
And it's fascinating because it's the same kind of dopamine hit to be in an argument with yourself inside your mind, or even an argument with someone else inside your mind.
Yep.
As it is to, exactly. As it is to like have a dopamine hit from, you know, smoking pot or Facebook scrolling,
right?
Or, you know, whatever. Like, oh, 3 more people listen to the podcast. You know,
well, that's
like
the power of our brains too. Because what are we doing? We're passively doing something, and when our body is creating that chemical within us. So if we can have that experience in all these different ways, we can have it in a positive way too. If our body is just creating that within us, we don't need it externally.
Yeah. One of my most favorite things that's happening with this dinner table podcast, with the dinner table, is there's a lot of things. I clean my house at least once a week. B, I have dinner guests over at least once a week, which means I make a nice meal, or friends make a nice meal.
Awesome. Thank you.
And C, I'm getting to talk things out with just like this conversation. And knowing about you, that we could have these really interesting conversations that are kind of out there, but you and I can speak the exact same language, just bounce right off of each other.
Not everybody can.
No, not at all. And it's very hard.
Yeah.
Like at one point,
it's unfulfilling if you have no one in your life that you can talk to like that.
It's totally, it's hard. And then you start seeking, and then you badger people that won't. That's what I do anyway. I just badger the shit out of people that won't listen to me or won't, you know, be in that conversation with me. What I found though, was that I was going over and hanging out at the chapel with you and your mom and everybody that goes over there, which by the way, I haven't been in a few weeks. So I need to get back over there. It's time for me to get back around over there.
Too, even though it's my mom's chapel.
Yeah. But it's where, you know, we can talk out this stuff and, you know, and there's really nothing that you can say that's wrong, because we're literally just, well, what did you think about that? And what did you see? And how did it feel to you? And what's the evidence that's proving this to you? And, and I would love I mean, I think that's one of my favorite things about the recovery group, the recovery Dharma group, is just like giving people evidence of healing. Truths. Raise your hand when you have a question, because I might have the exact same question.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that kind of stuff. So I've been grateful to have that. The Chapel of Spiritual Light, of course, is what we're talking about. So anybody should look that up and check it up. Your mom says that you can only find that place if you're called to find it.
That's definitely how it feels. Yeah.
Well, I showed up for the first time.
Right time.
Yeah. You know, like I needed it clearly.
Yeah.
So, but tell me a little bit more about your business, your art, the things that you do.
So I'm a painter and a photographer, but I'm primarily painting as my passion. And so my business is Schwengler Creative, and I also go by my name, Angela Schwengler. So I'm online. I try to post all the time, but I paint landscapes, I paint people, and I also photograph weddings and engagements. And I've been doing that now for since 2017, however many years that's been for the photography side. The art side, I've been doing that since I was in diapers. So I've only just been making money at it maybe since I was 11, or maybe a little younger than that.
Since you were 11? That's so cool.
I used to go knocking door to door selling like Looney Tunes drawings that I did, selling them for $0.25 or something. I was like, if I could sell stuff for school, then I can go door to door selling my drawings. And it worked. I was able to gain some money. But I mean, that's my passion, is I love to paint. And, you know, I'm finding that this path that I'm going down, being vulnerable and expressing more of myself and leaning into the childlike attributes that I've kind of pushed aside, I'm kind of carving out a path that's different in my business than I ever thought it would be, which is more just being myself, you know, and I want to explore more online of, you know, maybe teaching and streaming and being more connected with a greater community than just trying to find somebody to sell to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I want to be more connected, and I want to help people, and I want people to see the beauty in life.
Yes.
And not necessarily just sell something to them.
Yes. Okay. So do you remember at the very beginning of the night when we first started talking, and I was telling you that like what I'm focusing on right now is understanding my universal purpose. And then then you have a career purpose, right? And then that to me, that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's why when you were saying it, I was nodding my head up and down so many times. I'm like, that's exactly where I am right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's all these different ways life could go, and you just never know.
But as long as you understand the core of your universal purpose, then you and
things
truth is,
make sense.
yes, the truth is we all have the same universal purpose, right? So then it's like, okay, understanding your universal purpose, and then you begin to lean into your talents with your universal purpose, and then it turns into a thing where it is about exactly what you're saying. It is about healing or whatever it is for you that you've been offered. And I also think that there's even within that, like there's elements of, okay, well, you are a painter, but you also are a healer, and you also are a networker, and you also are a, like, and that's how it is for me. It's that like I fit into all of these little like categories, but what I have to do is focus on what's the universal purpose.
Yeah, I used to think I had to fit in a box. I was like, I have to separate all these different parts of me and maybe make a business for each one.
Right.
Because I was like, I need to find a way to make this, profitable or whatever. And I was thinking, okay, niche down or whatever. Yeah. But now I'm like, no, I just need to be me.
Yes.
And, something will come out of it because I just need to be more who I am.
Be you doing the things that are your talent.
Yeah.
And my talents are gardening, and my talents are being outside in the heat all day, and my talents are speaking to people, and my talents are being brave enough to say shit other people won't say about things, And
pathways will open up
exactly.
when you're more yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened for me. Because, even thinking about all these different things that I've gained and these different jobs that I've had, I'm like, okay, well, now I never thought I would work outside. And here I am 3 years later, I'm still working outside in the blistering heat, but now I'm like, okay, what about plein air painting? And that's when you go outside and you're painting in nature. And I love impressionism. And that's where that started, was when artists would just go out. And
that's what you should do from the farm. That we've talked about some things
I really
some projects we could do, like let's do that here. Let's have a group do plein air painting.
That would be awesome.
Be amazing. It's
so beautiful here.
It is I mean, and we're in July and it's beautiful here. Imagine what it looks like in April. Like it is insanely gorgeous around here. Yeah. And the birds. And this morning it was so beautiful. I'm like, I keep going back to the weather, but the birds were singing, the trees were, it was just, so that's the trick we need to have out here. You and I,
that would be awesome.
I mean, I'm not a painter, but I draw.
But you could be.
Yeah. I could be anything.
There's no rules to it.
There are no rules. There are no rules. I've actually, started putting up I have about 20 years worth of drawings. And I've started putting some of those up for sale when I go out and do some things and putting them up on my website and stuff like that. So you have, and I just started doing merchandise with the photographs that I take out here on the farm. You have merchandise too available on your website, right?
I do. Yeah. Every painting that I've posted online can be purchased as many different things. It can be mugs, tote bags, pillowcases, t-shirts. I mean, there's so many different things. And I have originals on there also.
I call it opening up all the faucets. That's how we get to do the life that we want to do, where we're not in some corporate job that we hate. That's how we move toward that position of what I love about the conversations at the dinner table is that they are very organic. And that was my intention from the very, very beginning of starting this podcast, was that it wasn't ever scripted. And we didn't even really know exactly what we were going to be talking about, and that we would chase rabbits, and that we would just go like down whatever trails and talk about whatever. And I think it's really gotten there, but it's interesting because it's just different people that come around and we can talk about anything. And you just flow and it's natural. That's what I want, because the best way for me to describe what this podcast is about, it's if we sat down to have dinner together, what will we talk about?
Yeah.
Could be anything. You and I are going to have specific interests that are going to match, right? Plus we're going to talk about food.
Yeah.
Plus I live on a freaking pretty cool farm. So we'll probably talk about that too. Yeah. So I've got 4 questions in my hand.
One of them fell.
And I'm going to let you just draw one. Okay. And what I did do was I pulled out these 4, making sure there were 4 that I would be willing, that would work.
Okay.
And then, but they're random to me too. So
let's see.
You can just grab one. And then you can either read it and ask me, or you can hand it back to me and I can just read it and ask you.
Oh, I don't even know how I would go about answering this one. I'll ask you.
Okay.
What one thing would you like to know about the future? That's a hard one.
It's really hard based on what you and I talk about often.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I don't really believe in the future, because it's impossible to like the future is going to be so affected. This is the reason why like people have been talking about this, like
It doesn't even exist.
exactly. And it's going to become
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so have you heard the stories about these this like online computer, like AI computer thing? I think they call it like the glass ball or something like that. And apparently like this is one of those conspiracy theory things,
no,
but like
I haven't heard of this.
apparently like the government has this they call it the glass ball, and it's some kind of computer program AI, and they've had it for like 20 years, and they can ask it what's going to happen in the future. And I'm actually not surprised by that, because I think that that's eventually, if it's not already happening for real, that is how AI is going to work, is that you can ask it. And the problem with that, as I understand it, even with AI or anything, that is that anything we do now changes the future.
Yeah.
So any decision that can be made in any moment in time, you can never predict the future.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to, even the idea that you predicted puts a thing into people's minds that changes the future.
Right.
Right.
I've had premonitions and stuff before, and
for
it
sure
feels like it's in the future, but it was actually happening when I had the dream.
To me, it's more, I believe I have visions.
And I've had that too.
And it's like big vision. It's like I have the ability to go way out. And then what I learned with grounding, and this is why I have a book that's coming out of me, because I am the grounded wanderer. You can wander in this outer space of vision if you can ground, right? And if you can bring all that stuff back down and see, okay, don't look up, do what's right in front of you, because now is all that exists. However, if you have premonition or vision where you can go, I have a feeling that we're going to need to be a lot more well, and we're going to need access to food, and we're going to need, then you can kind of see the future is to what, I might need to start a nonprofit where we start like talking about food and like get a farmer's market going and strengthen some farmers.
My stuff was so mundane, because I'm thinking premonition. I actually had a dream where I was somewhere, and then I thought about it. That was a weird dream. And it's so mundane, not even anything changing the world. Like I'm in a room and this is what it looks like. And then I'm in that room. Right, a few days later.
Yes. But you know what? That's probably like that's threads of, you were going to go there, right? And you already had seen it. You probably saw it in another life. You mean like you're probably, to me, that's a little bit different in that it's like all of these, we don't understand time. And all of these things are occurring all at the exact same time. So the thing that happened was already occurring while you were having the premonition.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
For me, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. And I'm sure that's probably how the vision works too, because again,
and I've had that too. That's a definitely different feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I actually didn't understand when a politician or a pastor or a leader of any kind would be like, you want them to be a visionary. Like, what's your vision, when someone would ask? And I didn't realize it until just the recent years that I have vision. And I'm like, oh, I actually understand what that means when someone says you have vision.
Yeah.
Now I understand what that means. But again, all it is like, I still think it's the same thing. It's like, we don't really understand how time works. So what it is that I'm saying in this exact moment, in another space and time, that thing is occurring. And you just happen to be one of those people that is empathic or sensitive enough to actually see it right now. Are you willing to be aware of it enough to go, okay, well, what can I do with that? Like, what is that light showing me?
Yeah.
You know, and be open to what your mind is telling you. So what would I want to change? But even still, like, what would I want to be? What would I want to put into what was the question again?
What one thing would you like to know about the future?
Oh, what would I want to know about the future? I still don't think, I mean, what would I want to know about the future?
I don't think I would want to know anything.
I don't know how. I can't even process that.
Yeah.
I guess. I want to know that I'm going to be okay, but I already know that.
Yeah.
Like that would be like, I mean, that's one of the things that everywhere I go. Remember earlier when you were saying like you have a concept about something or like you understand something, but you haven't, not necessarily feeling it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure this is exactly the same, but it kind of has this feeling about it. And that is, I know I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm a strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm capable. I know I'm, all the things every single person tells me, and they mean it, right? Yeah. What I need to do is get from their perspective, which is like, be the person on the outside seeing myself going, that chick's going to make it. I'm not even worried about her. Because then a little bit, it feels a little bit painful to me.
Yeah.
Because what I hear is everybody going, you don't need my help. You're good.
Yeah.
And really what they're saying is, oh my God, you're so good. You're so fine. You're so capable. You're so okay.
But that must be so uncomfortable when you're coming from a place of the opposite, or you need, that constant
validation
instead of having it within you. Or on the flip side, we're talking about intuition earlier. So it's like trusting, going beyond the ego that is used to being like, oh no, I don't have it, to like what's beyond that.
Yeah.
Because somewhere deep down, that all those other things are true and that you are good, but you're letting yourself get in the way.
That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. And every time someone says it to me, that's what I was talking about like being on the outside, being able to observe. Every time someone says it to me, instead of going, why can't they just like hug me and that kind of victim-y, like instead I'm like, okay, see you through their eyes, see you through their eyes, see your life path through their eyes.
When it becomes more about self-love, because instead of seeking that external validation of that hug from somebody else, like, oh, why won't they give me a hug? Or, can they please embrace me? It's like, well, you need to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
Before you can ask that of anybody else. Cause then it's not going to be real if you're getting it from somebody else, if that's what you need to feel whole or whatever,
Yeah. I think that's probably what I did in my last relationship. In all honesty, please validate me forever.
Me too. We're on a similar path, I think.
You know what? I said this earlier tonight, and I was like, I think one of the big battles going on is the masculine, feminine, divine. There's something going on that I'm definitely not in control of, but we're certainly on the path of it. We're certainly affected by the feelings of the whatever is occurring with that masculine feminine exchange.
Yeah.
Whatever
it
Earth
like
is doing, whatever
there, but there really should be unity. The acceptance of both.
Maybe it's because we're ready to be unified.
Well,
and
there's
so
always before a shift, there's this big uncomfortable feeling. And that's what I was feeling like a week or two ago.
Yes.
I felt such this uncomfortable feeling within myself.
Yes.
And I was trying to seek out like these thoughts to validate why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I'm like, there's a shift coming. And I just need to know that, because when I'm uncomfortable, it means change is coming.
Yeah.
And when change is coming, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but for whatever reason, it shakes me to my core.
Oh yeah.
And it's just me needing to pay attention to the intuition that something needs to change or is changing. And it's going to unfold, and it's probably going to be for a good reason.
Absolutely. And to have the mental acuity to be able to, like, I think that that's going to be a huge part of survival in the next decades or years or however many years is mental acuity, like the ability to process that kind of stuff that you're talking about, without the depression getting so deep that we don't recover from it.
Well,
and
it's
I think
everybody attaches themselves to the depression. You don't have to make that your identity.
Right.
It can be something separate from you, and you can observe it while it's happening and not get so attached to be like, I am depressed.
Yeah.
It's like
personal.
You have depression, and everything is transient. Everything changes. So it doesn't mean you need to be stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for coming to dinner tonight. It was an absolute joy to have you here on the farm. And I look forward to more interactions with you here on the farm and everywhere in the world.
Thank you. Me too.
And
likewise.
Thank you all. Yes. Thank you all for being here with me, with us at the dinner table this evening. Please always remember that you can support the podcast. If you go to dinnertabletalks.com at the top, it'll just say support the podcast. Again, talking about opening up the faucets and being a creative and trying to make that work in a capitalistic society, it means that I actually have to have money to pay some of my bills. And so if you guys want to continue to help me stay on this path, that's something you can help me out with. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel, rate, review. All the things that you can do with all of that stuff are hugely helpful for me. One other thing that has officially started, and that is I do have a Patreon account now.
Woo-hoo.
I know. It's called Aislynn's Whims. So who freaking knows what's going to happen? I've already posted one thing up yesterday. I did a talk about celebrating on 4th of July. So that's going to be on there, and there's going to be other things that are going to be coming. So that's a way that you can support me. There's going to be education for the garden if that's what you're into. I'll do some stuff that. There's going to be stuff on my road trip because I'm about to take a round trip in my Yukon where I'm going to be sleeping in my own car. So all kinds of things are going on in my world. Of course, you can always support anything that I'm up to just by simply reaching out to me, coming to the farm, anything like that. And anybody that's on the podcast is also somebody that's doing something amazing in this world as well. So let's take a look out for what Angela's up to too, because she's out there doing some really cool creative stuff as well.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here, you guys. And I'll see you very soon. Love you.